Chapter 11. Israel. Israel whistled as he grabbed his keys and headed for his truck. Tonight, he had a special dinner planned with Tiffany. After their glow golf date, they'd spent nearly every day together. When their schedules allowed, they ate lunch together, either in the break room or in his office. And every night after work, they got together for a devotional. Most days, that too happened in his office as it was quieter. But occasionally, they would take their Bibles to a restaurant and have dinner together as well. Now, nearly a month later, he'd planned a special night with dinner, a movie, and a gift that bulged softly in his pocket. "Well, don't you look dashing?" she said with a wide smile when she opened the door at his knock 20 minutes later.
"I could say the same for you."
He leaned in and planted a soft kiss on her lips. The first kiss with her had been amazing, and unlike some women he dated in the past, it had remained just as amazing with every subsequent kiss. He could honestly see himself kissing only her for the rest of his life and being completely happy. "So, where are we going tonight?" Tiffany grabbed a light jacket before locking the door, though Israel doubted she would need it. Summer was drawing to a close, but the evenings were still warm, at least until the sun set completely.
"Dinner and then a movie? I figured we could go someplace a little fancier to celebrate a month together."
"A month? Is that all it's been?" Tiffany asked, a teasing note in her tone. Israel knew she was kidding, so he decided to play along.
"I know. It feels like forever, right?"
"Definitely." She flashed him a wide smile before a grimace contorted her features, and she pressed a hand against her stomach, doubling over in the process. Concern surged within Israel, and he grasped her arms, unsure what was happening.
"Are you okay?"
Tiffany held up a finger and took a few deep breaths before returning to a standing position. "I'm okay. It's just a stomach cramp. I've been having a few all day, but they go away quickly."
"Is it food poisoning? Did you eat something that disagreed with you? Do you need to stay home? We can do this date later."
"No, it's fine. It's nothing I ate. I get them every few weeks, but they don't last long, and they disappear quickly. Let's not ruin the night." Though she dismissed them as no big deal, Israel wasn't sure that was the case.
"Have you been to the doctor? Maybe he or she could help."
She smiled at him, though the light did not reach her eyes like it normally did. "You sound like Holly. I promise if they get any worse that I'll set an appointment." Israel was pretty sure that if her pain got any worse, she'd be curled up on the floor and unable to call a doctor. But he decided to let the issue go for now. He could tell she was defensive about this for whatever reason, and he didn't want to push her, at least not yet.
"Okay, but promise you'll let me know if it gets too bad and I need to take you home."
"I will." She pulled her shoulders back, as if attempting to assure him she was indeed better now. "Now, let's go enjoy that dinner you've planned." Though Tiffany kept up a chipper chatter all the way to the restaurant, Israel could not shake the unease from his mind. He didn't know what her cramps might be indicative of, but he did not miss the slight grimaces she tried to hide, even on the way to the restaurant, and every one sent a pang of worry straight to his gut.
"Are you sure you're up for this?"
he asked as he parked the truck and turned off the engine. "Israel, I'm fine. Let's just enjoy dinner." He could hear the slight note of irritation in her voice, so he decided to push the issue from his mind and focus on the evening he'd planned.
"You're right. This place is supposed to have the best steak in town, so I hope you're hungry."
He flashed what he hoped was a smile that did not show his reservations, before hopping out of the driver's side and hurrying to her side to open the door for her. He knew that some women in the current culture found the gesture insulting, but his mama had always told him to offer, and thankfully Tiffany seemed to appreciate the act. He took her hand as they crossed the parking lot, And though he tried to keep his focus forward, he could not help sneaking glances at her to make sure there were no more grimaces. When they reached the door, he finally allowed himself to relax a little. The hostess greeted them and led them to a candlelit table, complete with a crisp white tablecloth and sparkling silver flatware. Israel pulled out Tiffany's chair for her before taking his own seat and thanking the hostess. "This place is beautiful, Israel, but what made you pick it?" Tiffany asked, as they each took a menu.
"You mean besides the fact that I wanted to take my girlfriend somewhere nice?"
he asked, enjoying the way the word girlfriend sounded as it escaped his lips. A soft pink spilled across her cheeks. "Yes, other than that."
"When my family came to America, we lived in Texas for a time. I fell in love with the taste of steak, and I honestly haven't had a good one in a while, so their claim better be true."
Tiffany smiled. "Well, if it isn't, maybe we can convince Holly to make you one. She's an amazing cook."
"She cooks too? I thought she just owned the restaurant."
Israel had gotten to know Holly a little better over the last month, but he'd had no idea she was a chef. Tiffany nodded as she picked up her menu. "She does. In fact, I think she may have started as a cook. She still cooks occasionally at the restaurant."
"She sounds like a woman with many talents, but she still pales in comparison to you."
Israel smiled before picking up his menu as well. A silence fell between them as they perused the offerings. "Israel, is that you?" A feeling of anxiety erupted in Israel's stomach as he recognized Sophia's bombastic voice. Ever since the incident where he had asked her not to give him free coffee anymore, she had backed off and only smiled and waved when he passed her. He had even ventured into the coffee shop once or twice since then, and she'd been on her best behavior. Friendly, but not flirty. So why was she making a scene now?
"Hello, Sophia,"
he said when she paused at their table.
"I'm sure you know Tiffany."
Sophia stiffened as she turned to look at Tiffany, but her voice kept the same sugary tone. "Of course, Tiffany. So good to see you." She turned back to Israel. "I had no idea Tiffany was the woman you were seeing. How nice."
"It is. In fact, we're celebrating 1 month together."
He let the word trail off, hoping she would get the hint and leave them alone. "Of course. Well, it was good to see you again. Don't be such a stranger." She placed her hand on his shoulder for just a moment before sauntering off. What was that about? Israel could hear the defensiveness in Tiffany's tone, though it was obvious she was trying not to let it show. He shook his head, wishing he had a better explanation than what was about to come out of his mouth.
"I don't know. When I first started at the resort, she was pretty flirty and gave me a free coffee. To be honest, it made me uncomfortable, so I never went back. After our first few dates, I came into work one day to find a coffee on my desk. I told her I was seeing someone and didn't feel comfortable taking free coffee, and she agreed to stop. I've barely spoken to her since then."
"Well, it seems like she's still interested in you."
"It doesn't matter what she's interested in,"
he said, reaching across the table to take her hand.
"The only one I'm interested in is you."
For a moment, he wasn't sure she believed him, but finally her eyes softened and she squeezed his hand. "I'm sorry. You're right. You can't control her actions, and I trust you. It's just my last relationship." She shook her head, but Israel understood. She'd told him about her last serious boyfriend and how he'd not only made her feel stupid for wanting a different dream than what society thought women should want, but also how she'd found out after she'd broken up with him that he'd been cheating on her as well. Talk about a double hurtful blow.
"Hey, I understand, but unlike that last guy, I'm glad you want to be a mom, and I'm not looking to date anyone else, okay?"
The corners of her lips lifted in a small smile before another grimace distorted her features. Her hand slipped from his grasp as it flew to her stomach.
Tiffany?
It's okay. But from the pained tone in her voice and the breathy words, it was clearly not okay. Israel felt helpless as he watched her eyes squeeze shut and lines dig deep creases on her forehead.
What can I do? Should we go to the doctor?
She shook her head. No, just give me a minute. Giving her a minute and watching her body contort in pain was not what he wanted to do. He wanted to soothe her, to take the pain away, anything to ease her discomfort and bring her smile back. After another few deep breaths, Tiffany's expression softened once again. I'm going to visit the bathroom, but I'll be right back. Israel could only nod as she got up from the table and walked away, unsure what else to say. What was going on with her, and why wouldn't she go to a doctor? Is your date over already? Israel didn't think he could feel any worse, but having Sophia appear at his table again did the trick.
No, she just went to the bathroom for a minute. Look, now is really not a good time.
An expression of hurt crossed Sophia's features as her eyes widened and her hand flew to her chest. Well, I'm sorry. I just saw you sitting over here all alone and thought I would come see if I could help. Israel? And now the situation had gotten as bad as it could. At least he was pretty sure it couldn't get worse.
Tiffany,
He pushed back his chair and stood, trying to see her behind Sophia. I think I'd like to go home after all. Her tone was emotionless and cool, and her eyes did not meet his.
But we haven't ordered yet, and
His hand went to the gift for her that was still in his pocket. This date was not going as planned. I can see you two need to talk, Sophia said, glancing between them before slinking off again to wherever she had come from. Just take me home, Israel. I'm really not feeling like dinner right now. Israel hated the resignation he heard in Tiffany's voice, but he had no idea how to make it better.
Of course, I'm so sorry.
He pulled a $10 bill from his wallet and placed it on the table. They'd only ordered water, but he knew they would still have to clear the table and reset it. Tiffany said nothing on the drive back to her house, and though Israel had 1,000 words running through his mind, none of them made it across his lips either. At least not until he parked the truck.
I'm sorry this night turned out so badly, Tiffany. I really wanted it to be special.
It's fine, she said, opening the door. He hurried out to meet her. No matter how she felt at the moment, he was going to walk her to the door.
No, it's not okay. I know the situation with Sophia didn't look good, especially with what you've been through, but you have to believe me when I say I didn't ask her to come back. I'm not interested in her.
She glanced up at him and chewed on her bottom lip before sighing. I know, it's just that combined with the pain. She shook her head. I just need to rest. Honestly, I'll call you tomorrow, okay? He wanted to argue, to tell her he could take the pain away, but the truth was that he couldn't. He had no idea what was going on with her or how to lessen the pain, but he did know the one thing he could do was assure her that he would be there for her.
Wait.
He pulled the gift from his pocket and held it out to her.
At least take this. I was going to give it to you at dinner.
Thank you. She took the wrapped gift from his hand and held it to her chest. I promise I'll text you later. He watched her walk into the house until the door shut. Wishing there was more he could do, he turned back to the truck. It wasn't until he touched the door handle that he realized she'd changed from calling him later to texting him later. With a sigh, he opened the door and climbed in. He could only hope that whatever was going on with Tiffany would get better and she would let him help her.